particular session, in the enhancing the organizational readiness for change, we will talk about that what are the different parameters are there. It will be having the definitions of the organizational readiness, and then we will talk about the Weiner's theory of organizational readiness to change, readiness principles, change model by the Prochaska and the DiClemente, then the appropriate motivational strategies for the each stage of change, the Kotter's S-step change model, McKenzie's 7S change model, organizational agility, case studies, then the research papers and the book recommendations as usual with the references will be there. Now, when we are talking about the defining the organizational readiness for change, ORC refers to the organizational members' shared resolve to implement a change in their collective ability to do so. So, therefore, in that case, as we have seen, that is the pre-COVID, COVID and the post-COVID, so many organizations are required to change themselves is there. But this change is only possible when there are the collective ability is there among the people and in the organization to do so. So, respectively, these dimensions are known as the change commitment and the change efficacy is there. When we talk about the change commitment, then it refers to an intention to implement a change that is shared across the members of an organization is there. So, first what organization is supposed to do, that is we have talked in the change model also, that is before change there has to be the understanding amongst all the stakeholders that there is a need of change. So, that is to be shared across the members of the organization, that is we want to make this particular change, and the benefits of these changes will be to making the organization with the better productivity and performances are there, or whatever the economic challenges are there, other challenges are there, then those by making these changes we will be able to meet that particular challenge. So, change efficacy is defined as the organizational members' shared beliefs in the joint ability to engage in those courses of action necessary to implement a change is there. It is very much necessary, that is the members, those who are in the part of this particular change process, they should have the joint ability to engage themselves, otherwise this change will not be possible. Change related efforts, which we hereby refers to a wellness program effort is there. So, therefore, in that case it is for what? It is for the betterment of all within the organizations and outside of the organization, all stakeholders, they should get the wellness effect. And so, it is the collective effort of organizational members to execute a change, and is a function of both the change commitment and the change efficacy is there. So, Weiner's theory of organizational readiness to change talks about that is a possible contextual factors are there. So, these factors are the organizational culture, policies and procedures, past experience, organizational resources and organization structure is there. When we make the change variance, then it becomes the organizational readiness for change, change management and the change efficacy is there, which related to the change related effort, initiation, persistence, cooperation, behavior and implementation effectiveness is there. Whenever we are talking about the possible contextual factors, that is the informational assessment is also there, there is a task demand, resource perceptions and the situational factors are there. Now, we will discuss each factor into the detail. That Weiner's theory posits that the organizational readiness for change is the product of the two constructs. First one is the change valence, or the degree to which the organizational members value the proposed change is there. Example, perceived need for change, perceived advantage to change and the perceived fit is there. And informational assessment, or the degree to which organizational members know what tasks are involved in the change, have enough resources available to implement the change, people, money and materials, and view positively situational factors such as the timing of change and the time available for the implementation is there. When organizational readiness is high, the theory posits organizational members are more likely to initiate change, exert greater effort in the support of change is there. So, therefore, in that case it is becoming very important, that is whenever making this organizational readiness, then these 30 organization members, they are likely to initiate the change and exert the greater effort in this making the whatever the changes are there. So, the support has to be provided by the organizational people is there. Now, the challenges that my organization may face for the readiness for change, and when it is not possible to change is there, then the resistance to change is a natural response to uncertainty and can be a major barrier to enhancing the organizational readiness. Employees may resist change because of fear of the unknown, a lack of trust in leadership, or concerns about how the change will impact their job. Limited resources are there. Organizations may struggle to allocate the necessary resources to enhance organizational readiness is there, including time, funding, and personnel. This can make it difficult to conduct assessments, provide training and support, or develop a culture of change is there. So here first and foremost is the acceptance for the change, otherwise there will be the resistance to change will be there, and if there is a resistance to change, then you have to make the lot of pressure or push the pressure to make this particular change is there. But if you are making the pre-change understanding, then definitely in that case the employees will be able to readiness for the change and then they will have that trust that is this change is for the betterment of all of us. However, as I always talk about, that management is the management of resources, man, machine, material, money, method, and minutes. How do you manage the resources? If you manage your resources in a very efficient way, then definitely you can make the readiness for change and you can bring the change. But if your resources are not enough, or there is a time constraints, or there is a funding constraints, or the employees resistance is there, then definitely it will be very difficult to conduct the assessment, providing the training and support, or develop a culture of change is there. Lack of leadership support or without leadership support, efforts to enhance organizational readiness for change may falter. So leaders play a critical role in creating a sense of urgency and commitment to change and communicating the vision and providing the necessary resources and support is there. So therefore, in that case, the leader has to be very strong. Leader has to be very much committed for making this particular change, and he should be able to get the people along with him so that he can bring the change. Otherwise, if the leadership support is not there, just by introducing the policy of to change, it will not create a readiness for change. Inadequate communication is there. Effective communication is critical for enhancing the organizational readiness, but organization may struggle to communicate the vision, goals, and progress of the change initiative effectively, and this can result in confusion, resistance, and a lack of buy-in from the stakeholders are there. Another challenge for the organization may face, that is about the inadequate communication is there. So the leader, when the policies actually flows from top to bottom for the change is there, and if there are the barriers in the communication, then definitely in that case the message will not go, that is how beneficial is this particular change is there. So effective communication is critical for the enhancing the organizational readiness, but organizations may struggle to communicate the vision, goals, and progress of the change initiative effectively. This can result in the confusion, resistance, and the lack of buy-in from the stakeholders is there. Limited stakeholder involvement is there. So involving stakeholders in the change process can help build buy-in and ownership is there. So but organizations may struggle to engage stakeholders effectively. So this can result in a lack of commitment and engagement, and resistance to the change initiative is there. So this is the very much important, that is you involve all the stakeholders, from the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. If you involve only the internal stakeholders, then definitely there will not be the effective change, because the change is impacting on the external stakeholders. For example, for the suppliers, for the customers. So if you are making any change, that change is definitely going to affect your suppliers and customers is there. If you are making the involvement of these customers, suppliers, government rules, policies, then definitely in that case that change that will be successful. Otherwise, it will be the problem of the involving the limited stakeholders for the success of change. Build a culture of change. Now, organizations that embrace change as a core value and they actually promote a culture of innovation and continuous improvement are more likely to be ready for change when it comes. This can be achieved by encouraging the creativity and the risk taking, celebrating successes, and the recognizing and addressing the resistance to change is there. Assess readiness for change. Conducting an assessment of the organizational readiness for change can help identify the strengths and weaknesses and inform the development of the strategies to enhance readiness. This can involve surveys, interviews and focus groups with the key stakeholders is there. So therefore, it is the assess the readiness for change is there, and therefore, this particular when you are building that culture of the change is there, then definitely it will be achieved by the encouraging the creativity is there. And when there is acceptance, there is a culture, and there is organizational practices to making the change. In the history of the organization also, the organization has made the continuous changes, then definitely in this case they will be having this the successful change by addressing the whatever the resistance to change is there. Now similarly, when we are talking about the whether the change has been successful or not, so therefore, in that case we have to first understand, can we measure the readiness of change, that is whether people are ready or not. So therefore, identify the strengths and weaknesses and inform the development of strategies to enhance the readiness is there. So when you are making the analysis of this readiness of change, you will find that there are the certain positives and negatives are there. So if there are certain negatives for to get the readiness of change, what it is expected, you will make the people ready. And for to ready, that is you make the analysis why there is a resistance, and when then you work on resistance, then the people will be having the less resistance slowly and slowly, and the culture of this readiness for change will be developed. And how to make this readiness? This can be through the survey. You can identify whether the people are ready or not, if there is resistance, why there is resistance. You can conduct the interviews, you can conduct the focus groups, the interactions with the key stakeholders, and take the pulse of the people, that is what is they really convinced or not with the change, or they feel that is this change is not necessary, or there is a resistance, change is necessary but there is a resistance for change. If this type of issues are there, then you have to think about it. Develop a shared vision. So developing a shared vision of the desired future state can help align stakeholders around a common goal and create a sense of urgency and commitment to change. And this vision should be communicated clearly and consistently throughout the organization is there. Now when we are overcoming with the resistance of change and creating a culture of the change for the bringing the change, then in that case it becomes important we create a sense of urgency and commitment to change, and this vision should be communicated clearly. So the people, and they are consistently throughout the organization, they support the changes there. Foster communication and collaboration is there. Effective communication and collaboration are critical for enhancing the organizational change readiness. This can involve creating opportunities for dialogue and feedback, involving stakeholders in decision making, and fostering a culture of transparency and the openness is there. So therefore, in that case, this particular involvement where you are creating these opportunities, then definitely in that case it will create a culture of the transparency and the openness is there. The strategies for enhancing the organizational change readiness can be the provide the training and support is there. So naturally when change will be there, the people will be having the new exposure and new work job. So therefore in that case providing the training and support to employees can help build the skills and confidence and reduce the resistance to change. This can involve providing the education and training on new technologies or the processes, offering the coaching and mentoring, and creating a supportive and inclusive work environment is there. So here it becomes very necessary, that is you provide that enabling conditions. You create a culture, enabling culture, so that the training and support is there, and you offer them this type of the online training, offline training, or you can conduct this coaching, mentoring, and creating a supportive and inclusive work environment, because now they have to adopt the new skills. Then by providing the training, you make them comfortable, that is they learn those skills and they becomes get the priorities. Monitor and evaluate the progress. Monitoring and evaluating the progress can help ensure that the change initiative is on track and identify areas that may require additional support or resources are there. So this can involve the regular check-ins with the stakeholders, measuring the progress against the predefined milestones, and the adjusting the change plan as the necessary is there. So therefore it is the monitor and the evaluate progress is there. So here it is the they are making this particular changes which plan is necessary is there. So here we find out that is the there are the certain changes which are to be made by this organization, and when there are these readiness for change is the culture and understanding the barriers, overcome the barriers, making that vision, training and development and support is provided, then we have to follow certain principles. These are the stages of the readiness of principles. Motivation exists along a continuum of readiness is there. So therefore, in that case change is a long process. It will not be within the short period. So therefore, in that case that motivation for long term is very, very important. The persons may start for the change with the motivation, but they may lack that particular motivation is there. So we have to understand to create the intrinsic motivation is there. So when we create the intrinsic motivation, that will create a continuum of the readiness is there continuously. Client progress through the stages in a spiral. So not linear. So therefore, in that case it will be it is very much important, that is the through stages in a spiral it is becoming the client's progress is there. When enhancing motivation, if the clinicians use strategies in a stage other than the one of the client is in, the result could be treatment non-compliance will be there. When we are enhancing the motivation and the strategies they are used, they are with these whatever the changes you want, then definitely then in that case that will be better. If clinicians push clients at a faster pace when they are ready to take, the therapeutic alliance may break down. So therefore, in that case here it is becoming the very, very important, that is they are putting this particular faster change with these epileptic alignment with the here which will be breakdown. So a relapse is an event, not a stage is there. So therefore, in that case whenever you are bringing the change and the change does not occur, then definitely that will be an event and not a stage. So again you have to go by the stages of the readiness for change is there. Now here I would like to talk about the change model by the Prochaska and the DiClemente in 1992. So here pre-contemplation is there, and then the contemplation is there, preparation, action, maintenance and the relapse is there. So pre-contemplation means where we are talking about, that is the no intervention of the changing behavior is there, and in the contemplation we are aware that is the there will be a problem exist and no commitment to action is there. So that will be the stage 2 of the contemplation. Then the preparation is there, intent upon taking the action is there, that is you want to make the changes. Then the change action will be there, that is the active modification of the behavior will be there, and the maintenance will be there. It is a sustained change because then unless and until whatever change you are bringing, if you are not maintaining them, then in that case that will not continue for long. And finally the relapse is there, fall back into the patterns of the behavior, and therefore you have to take the corrective actions. Now we will take these all the stages one by one. Pre-contemplation. So individual is unaware, unable, unwilling to change, and no intent to change is there. So indicators are the argue, interrupt, deny, ignore, avoid, reading, talking or thinking about the behavior. So individual is traditionally characterized as the resistance and unmotivated is there. So therefore, in the pre-contemplation, first you have to understand that is what is the stage, what is the mental stage for the readiness for change is there, and then you have to go for the clinical tools. So establish the rapport with the people, so they can express that why they do not want to change, why they resist the change, and determine why the client has come to you, and therefore in that case you have to find out. That is the by providing the information on risk, pros and cons of use, and acknowledge the clients the thoughts, feelings, fears and the concerns are there, because this change may create a fear of losing the job, and therefore keep the interview the informal and see that is what is their opinions are there. So contemplation stage, individuals ambivalent or the uncertain regarding the behavior change. So indicators, individual meets clinician halfway, willing to look at the pros and cons of behavior change. And individuals traditionally characterized as unpredictable, time intensive is there. Stage 2, contemplation clinical tools. Discuss and weigh pros and cons of recovery. Emphasize clients' free choice and the responsibility. Elicit self-motivational statements. Discuss the client's goal in the life, How will you recovery after this is there, that is the contemplation clinical tools will be there, and reduce the fear of recovery through the example and the problem solving is there. And in this stage third, that is the preparation. So, individual shift from the thinking about behavior change to the planning first steps is there. So, indicators are individual ask questions, considers options, demonstrate openness in considering behavior change is there. So, individuals traditionally characterized as compliant, coming along, good to work with. So, preparation clinical tools support the efforts to change, clarify goals and identify successful strategies, encourage client to commit to action, give client clear, consistent and unequivocal messages about the recovery is there. Now, when we say the action, individual demonstrates steps towards behavior change such as periods of abstinence, indicators individuals receptive to the clinical interventions, treatment compliance is normal, demonstrated behavioral change affects the positive outcomes in the other areas, that is the relationship at home and work. So, individuals traditionally characterized as successful working, the program is there. So, therefore, that action is required. Action clinical tools seek commitment to specific behavior change at each session, acknowledge difficulties, support, even minimal progress is there. Identify the risky situations, triggers and the coping strategies, help client find the new reinforces and the support, the perseverance is there, sticking to the plan is there. Then is maintenance is individual sustained treatment goals. Indicators are individual has made behavior changes, practices stable abstinence, met treatment goals and practices healthy coping strategies. The individual is traditionally characterized as ready for successful change, no longer needing treatment, ready for the aftercare is required. The maintenance clinical tools are there, the support and affirm changes, rehearse new coping strategies and countermeasures to the triggers, review personal growth long term goals, encourage client to contribute to the recovery of others is there. So, appropriate motivational strategies for the each stage of change is the client stage of change. So, pre-contemplation is there. The client is not yet considering the change or is unwilling to unable to change is there. So, appropriate for the clinician establish the rapport, ask permission and build the trust. Raise doubts or concerns in the client about the substance using the patterns are there and express the concern and keep the door open. Stage 2 is the contemplation. The client acknowledges concern and is considering the possibility of change, but is ambivalent and uncertain. So, normalize the ambivalence, help the client tip the decisional balance scales towards the change, elicit and summarize the self motivational statements of the intent and commitment from the client is there. The client is committed to and planning to make a change in the near future, but is still considering what to do. So, explore the treatment expectancies and the client's roles. Clarify the client's own goals. Negotiate a change or treatment plan and behavioral contract, considering and lower barriers to change. Help the client enlist social support. So, therefore, the appropriate motivational strategies for the clinicians that can be approached under the stage of the preparation. Similarly, for the action is concerned, the clients actually taking steps to change, but has not yet reached a stable state. So, here the suggestion is engage the client in treatment and reinforce the importance of the remaining in the recovery. Help the client identify high risk situations through a functional analysis and develop the appropriate coping strategies to overcome these is there. So, client stage of change is the maintenance, has achieved the initial goal such as abstinence and is now working to maintain the gains are there. So, here the support the lifestyle changes are the affirm the client's resolve and self efficacy, help the client practice and use new coping strategies to avoid a return to use, and develop a fire escape plan if the client resumes substance use, and review a long term goals with the clients are concerned. Kotter's 8-step change model, 3 phases, the create a climate for change, and this phase which happens first is about creating a shared understanding of the change you want to make and why you want to make it. The engage and enable the organization, and the phase is about the engaging your team so that they are empowered and the enthusiastic to effect the change with the organization is there. Implement and sustain, this phase is about pressing the ahead after your initial successes to build the momentum and fully embed the change within your organization. Now, Kotter's S-step change model, which is create into the basically 3 phases: create the climate for change, engage and enable the organization, and implement and sustain. So when you are creating the climate for change, so first and foremost you have to mention about that is the create the urgency, and therefore in that case when you are creating an urgency, so the people will understand that is there is a need for change. So build a coalition, so communicate with the people, create a vision, and when you are communicating the vision to the people, then definitely in that case you will find that is the people are getting ready. Now the engage and enable the organization, so create a quick wins are there, because the motivation is to be retained. If motivation is not there, they will not be able to work. So therefore create and quick the wins are there, and implement and sustain, build on the change, and embed the change is there. So this is the Kotter's 8-step change model is there. Now the another model which is the McKinsey's the 7S change model is there, which is the soft S and the hard S. So soft S are the skills, staff, style, shared values. Hard S are the strategy, structure, and the systems are there. So therefore in the McKinsey 7S model was developed by the Robert Waterman and the Ton Peters during the early 1980s by the two consultancy McKinsey consultancy organization. The model is a powerful tool for the assessing and analyzing the changes in the internal situation of an organization. So therefore when you are having these soft skills of these staff, style, shared values are there, and when you are making the support of the strategy, structure and systems, then definitely in that case you will be working very efficiently, bring the change very efficiently. Now the hard elements are within the direct control of the management, as it can be easily defined and identified. The following elements are the hard elements in an organization. So strategy is the plan of action or the roadmap on the blueprint by way of which an organization gains a competitive advantage or a leadership edge. Structure is refers to organizational structure or the reporting pattern is there. So systems is includes the day-to-day activities by in which the staff members involve themselves for ensuring the completion of their assigned tasks are there. The soft elements are less tangible and are difficult to be defined and identified, as such elements are more governed by the culture. Shared values, the superordinate goals or the core values which get reflected within the organizational culture or influence the code of ethics. Style, this lays emphasis on the leadership style and how it influences the strategic decisions, people motivation and organizational performance is there. So the general staff are the capabilities of the employees, and the skills are the core competencies or the key skills of the employees play a vital role in the defining the organizational success. This is the organizational agility which we will be creating through this capacity, commitment and the culture is there. This commitment which I have already talked to you, that is how to build the commitment amongst the employees. Then therefore organizational agility is to be there, the belief that they can bring the change and the norms and behaviors are there. Then the capacity is there, motivating and implementing and the sustaining changes in the organizational capacity influences the ability. So similar, and then the culture is there. Now this is a case study RBS stuck in the culture of expansion, and through this case study you will be able to understand that is how you can bring these particular changes. And when this is an example of an organization, when an organization wants to make an expansion, and then the find that is the how this successfully organization has to be brought to the particular changes. This is the research paper Organizational Readiness for the Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare and Insights for the Decision Making and the Practices is there. So therefore nowadays we see that is a lot of talk is about the decision science, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and therefore the organizations are required to making the changes. To make these changes it is necessary that is they are making the insights for the decision making practices. This research paper will help you, that is how to bring the organizational readiness for the artificial change in the healthcare is brought by the organization. This is the book recommendation Change Ready, how to transform the change resistance to change readiness, and Change Ready, how to transform a manager's guide to managing and sustainable change in the 21st century workplace. I am sure that this book will help you to get the readiness for the change, and also that how to create the readiness of change in your organization is there. Now these are the references which you can refer for the further detailed studies, and with those you will be able to make the readiness for change in your organization. Thank you.